Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
Is this seat taken?
Hey, Kiernan, how are you?
Are you noticing anything in my tone, Ryan?
You're so far away. I thought I'd be sitting closer to you.
No, usually there's
episodes.
a real pep in my step up here up front, but not today.
No.
You know why?
Because the Chiefs won the Super Bowl?
I don't know what that means, Ryan. You were scheduled months ago. We decided that this was the weekend.
I would say weeks ago.
Months ago. Many weeks equals months, Ryan.
Yeah, I don't know that we're over 7 weeks. I think it's more like 3.
No, we are definitely 8 or up, and that makes it months. Months ago, Ryan and I had decided that this was the weekend. He was going to come up to Boston. He was going to stay in my guest room. We were going to record an episode together for the first time in the same podcast studio. People don't realize we're remote. You're in New York. I'm in Boston.
Yeah.
If you think this is magic over the internet, if you had just heard us in person, folks, it would have been 12 times better.
But don't you think we should save that for like a special episode, like episode 100 or 1,000?
I think 72 is a very special episode. And as is Ryan's way, I get a sad little text. Oh, I'm so sorry. Work is really busy, and now I can't come.
Oh, I would love to be with you and little baby Charlie in Boston right now. I am sorry that I'm in Brooklyn.
All I know is all weekend he's posting these Instagram videos. He's out at restaurants. He's out at the Strand bookstore.
I did go to the Strand bookstore. I did buy a book.
Doesn't seem too busy to me, everybody. Doesn't seem too busy to me. And had you come, maybe we could have enjoyed some of Boston's classic street food. Because, Ryan, that is today's topic, street food. Is
Boston known for its street food?
Well, you could get a lobster roll that somebody drops on the street. You just pick it back up and dust it off, and there you have it. No, I wouldn't say Boston is particularly known for its street food, but it has a couple street food places. But no, it's not one of these great destinations for street food. And today we're going to talk about kind of the strategy, philosophy. This is going to be one of those more laid-back, fun episodes. Because, Ryan, you know how these past few weeks we've been doing really exhausting episodes, really information heavy. We've been doing city guides in Canada. Then we've got the great interview last week with the travel editor of the New York Times. So I had to, be in a suit and buttoned up and really professional. This week, we're just going to let our hair down. We're going to talk about something informal, something we can relax into. You wear a T-shirt because we're just going to get some street food.
I love street food.
All right, Ryan, but before we get out to that delicious street food, we've got a joint segment. This is where, we often get listener mail into outofofficepod@gmail.com, where we welcome all different types of correspondence, reactions to episodes, suggestions for episodes, corrections for things that Ryan got wrong. Fan
mail, just
general fan mail.
Hey, you guys are awesome.
Keep it up. Ryan, you should really keep your appointments when you tell Kiernan that you're gonna go to his house because he does some preparation. He buys some nice alcohol and gets some nice food so that he could cook it for you.
Some natural wine.
He's left with some natural wine. It's like I live in a natural wine cellar right here.
Wow! Oh my gosh! Well,
yeah.
You didn't play that card.
It's all going straight down the drain. Straight down the drain.
Well, natural wine will clog your drain. You gotta be careful.
So we got some listener mail. And, Ryan, this is ticking up to a point where I actually think we're going to have to come up with a listener mail segment name. You know how we like to do travel names like Last Stop and Quest for Rick Steves. Now, I bring up Quest for Rick Steves because this is actually a joint listener mail and Quest for Rick Steves, if you can believe it or not, bringing two of my favorite things together.
So this can only...
from listeners and pursuing Rick Steves.
So this must be an email from Rick Steves.
It is not an email from Rick Steves. So we still holding out hope. Remember, we heard from his people 2020, a very busy year, much like 2019, also a busy year. Though I'm thinking that I should probably follow up with them, leverage that New York Times travel editor interview, right? Amy Vershup, that's not nobody Rick Steves.
I mean, Rick Steves is being left behind. by not appearing at this point. Yeah,
I completely agree. He's being left behind. But we got a listener. His name is Joseph. I believe that we once had a question from Joseph very early in our run here. And Joseph, upon hearing that Rick Steves' PR staff was not sort of open to scheduling an interview for this year, which is what the quest for Rick Steves is all about. It's about getting Rick Steves here on the pod.
Right.
And he said apparently he's a bit of a researcher. He's an organizer. He studies human psychology and sociology. Wow. And he offered to apply these skills to trying to court Rick Steves and lure him, sort of romance him here onto the show. And so he wrote a whole bunch of really great tips about how I might get word to Rick Steves and form a bond that I can naturally parlay into an interview. So
this seems like we're getting even closer to that restraining order.
I mean, listen, if so, I hope Joseph isn't a cop. This could be a trap.
Yeah.
So my favorite part of the email, which was lengthy, was called Rapport Building Themes. And this is where he broke down bullet points of topics that I might tackle with Rick if we should meet over a beer or just running into each other on the street just completely by chance.
Or over some street food.
Or over some street food, sure. So the first one, great suggestion, frugality, right? That's what Rick Steves talks about in his book. Obviously, I'm a bit of a frugal fellow myself. I like to just think it's responsible with money. But, I've been known to take a wow air from time to time, like anybody. Ryan's doing something more important that doesn't allow him to respond to me because this weekend was very busy for him, everybody. He's so busy that he couldn't come. He also can't listen to the podcast as we record it.
I'm listening. Sorry. I got a message and I've closed my Slacks.
Also, you closed your Slacks. I was going to say, I was very uncomfortable looking at your underwear that whole time. Thank you for finally closing all your Slacks. He mentions maybe understanding that not everyone travels and trying to be a bridge between worlds. I think that's a great suggestion because Ryan, you and I are so often talking about how we want this pod to not just be for, brave world travelers, but also to celebrate local tourism at historic sites that might be just down the road, finding, things to feed the spirit of wanderlust every single day. So that's something, Rick Steves can understand. He's always trying to convince, especially Americans who haven't traveled, to go out there and travel.
This seems like a good suggestion, but how do you get it to Rick Steves?
Well, he didn't give me any tips on how to approach Rick Steves, like how to locate him.
Yeah.
But I think he knows I have some ideas where.
Does he understand that we've hit a wall though with his official representation?
Yeah, but this was picking up on the fact that on a previous Rick Steves quest for Rick Steves, I had said it's time to abandon the official PR routes.
Right.
I have to find a relationship direct to Rick Steves because that's the only way this is going to happen.
I feel like one of our listeners must know someone who works for Rick Steves. How big is the travel world?
You've made the cardinal mistake right there. We don't want somebody who knows someone who works for Rick Steves. We want someone with a connection to the man himself, Rick Steves. So anybody who knows somebody that has some connection into this company and can get us Rick Steves' emails, that's where I will be leveraging Joseph's suggestions.
Do you think it's like a Yahoo email or like an AOL email? What do you imagine?
Definitely, based on the cut of his khakis, I'm gonna say it is a Yahoo. I think it's a Yahoo.
It might be MSN.
Oh, I don't know. That's going back to when you joined the internet.
Oh.
Another suggestion from Joseph is maybe I could talk to Rick Steves about spirituality. And he linked here to a blog post from Rick Steves, which I'll put up on the show notes for anyone who's interested, which is titled "Where Does a Good Lutheran Catholic Eat?" And it's apparently Rick has often been. I didn't know this, Ryan. Maybe you did. Rick Steves is often accused of being anti-Catholic.
What?
Yes. Apparently,
what a weird thing to be accused of, frankly.
I mean, I just think it's so,
Yeah.
he writes guides to Catholic countries, often Spanish speaking countries where Catholicism is dominant. And,
Sure.
he has to tell some of the ugly history side of the church. I mean, could you really blame the guy for talking about the Inquisition when he's writing about Spain? I mean, it's not his fault.
I think it's not appropriate to bring up the Inquisition when you're in Spain.
Well, I think it's most important with the Inquisition. You just want to show both sides.
Yeah, both sides, definitely.
So
does he know? I mean, this show is basically like the Vatican. I mean, you and I are de facto cardinals.
Yeah, it's really the Catholic Travel Hour.
Yeah.
We're trying to get syndication on the Vatican
EWTN.
radio.
We were EWTN.
Absolutely. And and we've got clergy coming through him, men of the cloth, as often as possible. It's why Ryan often has his slacks down.
We've slept in Spanish monasteries. I mean, this.
That's
is
true. The audio
spiritual.
on that episode left something to be desired. It was early days.
A lot of echo in those monasteries.
And so he talks about how he's a spiritual guy, how he chooses to be a Lutheran, but also how he's connected to important Catholics.
He
in his
chose
life.
to be a Lutheran?
Says he chose to be a Lutheran. And so he explores his religious views. Joseph picks up on the fact that you and I talk about Catholicism a lot, said, this could really be, this could spark a conversation that might...
We could build bridges here.
We could build bridges. We could change minds. We could connect on a whole nother level.
I love that. Well, that's convinced me.
And then just the final two that he's got here, he thinks that Rick and I could really connect on the fact that we both love hyper-organization, itineraries, lists within lists, Excel spreadsheets. We like to do all the research and to have our moments ready on a trip to know exactly where we're going, what we're aiming to do, and maybe leaving some pockets for spontaneous fun, just within 15 to 30-minute periods.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a really exciting conversation. Just going back and forth on like the way that you've structured your Excel documents, you track. Yeah.
And then the final suggestion here, and again, you could tell Joseph loyal listener because he suggested that I could lead a conversation with Rick Steves about how I think of travel almost as a public service, and what a obsessive I am about the national parks as a public treasure, and then kind of draw Steve out and kind of draw Steves out. Do I have to call him Steves? I feel like I call him Rick, right? We're first name basis,
you wouldn't call him
say?
Steves. Yeah.
No, but it's like in a newspaper where they say the full name and then you can just refer back to him by the last name.
Right. I wouldn't recommend that in an interview, though.
Okay. Well, let's just call him Ricky. He feels that I could talk about travel as public service. He said maybe I could mention the Bhutan trip and work in the gross national happiness. Get his take on how the countries that he is an expert on, how they consider preservation of their national treasures and how they encourage tourism. So listen, these are great suggestions. I'm gonna bookmark them. Anybody else who has ideas on this quest for Rick Steves? I mean, I'm not going to say that the quest is over. It's far from over. I persevere. You know me. Once I get something in my head,
you tilted windmills, my friend.
I do, and this is a tremendous windmill, and I am tilting so far off the horse. I'm practically falling off and being dragged behind. So if you have suggestions, if you have questions, and if you have a connection to Rick Steves, you're going to want to email us. Ryan, what's the email address again?
podcast@gmail.com.
Pretty sure it's out of office pod.
Out of office pod at gmail.com.
That's right. Out of office pod at gmail.com. And any other correspondence that you want to have with us, we will bring it on the show. We love listener mail. We want to be talking about it more in this A segment, as the professionals call it. But Ryan, unless you have any other points of order, I'm going to suggest we take off. I'm getting hungry. Let's get some street food.
Yeah, I think it's time to take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan, we are here to talk about street food. This is, again, I just want to encourage us. Let's just be laid back. Let's explore. We're going to share some of our own experiences, to let tips come as they may. But, I don't like it to just be willy-nilly. So I created 5 just laid back framing questions to bring into the episodes. So I would just begin by saying, Ryan, maybe you could recount, one or two places that you've been that you think have tremendous street food. What were your best street food experiences?
Okay, so I think Berlin with doner kebabs. Berlin has, if you go out on the town in Berlin, and it's hard not to.
Sure.
When you're done partying, there's nothing like believe it or not, a German doner kebab in Berlin. They're everywhere, and it's, I think, a really terrific example of street food. And then, of course, I'm going to have to say Mexico City, not just for the tacos, which are fantastic, but Mexico City has these hot dogs that are grilled, and they add cheese to them, and they wrap them in bacon. And I'm obsessed with those. So those are two street foods that stand out in my mind.
Two seems like a good number, so I'll just throw out two that come to my mind. The first is this one's very strange, but it's in Iceland. And do you know anything about the food of Iceland, Ray?
I don't know. I mean, not that I didn't learn on Iceland as in Iceland.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I don't think we had time for in that episode is there's one food stuff that like a lot of people kind of stereotype about with Iceland, which is fermented shark meat, and it's basically rotting shark flesh. And you can even buy it in these kind of vacuum sealed packages. But that, honestly, it's very much, it is like a super, super traditional food that is very rarely eaten. And it's really, to me, kind of a tourist trap. But what they do have is they have tremendous hot dogs. They've got these hot dog stands in Reykjavik. And they were kind of put on the map by a visit from Bill Clinton to Iceland.
Oh, of course, Bill Clinton's going to find a hot dog.
Yeah.
I mean, not anymore because he's vegan. But
right.
There was a time when Bill Clinton found probably several hot dogs a day.
Oh, there was a time where he was encouraging his interns to find a hot dog.
Oh, right.
Well, so he famously paid a visit to Reykjavik. And he went to one of these hot dog stands, made it world famous, and they now have it's kind of a must-have when you go and visit Iceland. You've got to get a hot dog from one of these few stands that they have around.
Is there a sign that Bill Clinton's hot dog was here? That's a sign that could be at a lot of places.
There isn't a sign, but many of the guidebooks do tell you which one he went to. And right, what's great about the hot dogs in Iceland is it's not just, ketchup or mustard and relish. They like to really go to town on these things. So they get raw onions, you get crispy fried onions, you get ketchup, you get this brown mustard, this really pungent brown mustard. And they also have sauces that's like a mayo, caper, kind of a bunch of herbs I couldn't tell you. So they really are a very robust street food, and they're perfect for those cold Reykjavik days.
I love a good street hot dog, and I love the fresh veggies and stuff. I wish that New York had better street hot dogs. Our street hot dogs are depressing.
Yeah, that's where. Yeah, well, that's because they're always boiling away in that very dirty water.
It's not good. I mean, New York street food situation is really, two things: pizza and halal.
Sure.
That's sort of the strongest thing that we have to offer.
And the second one I would recommend, it really sticks out in my mind. I'm going to dive a little deeper into my Vietnam street food experiences here later on in the pod. But one of the most memorable ones is you can actually, it's not a street food, it's a street drink. You can get a fresh, local, homemade beer around Vietnam. And the places are called Bai Hoi. I think it's Biahoi, and it's these fresh beer stands, and they tend to be really low alcohol, like 3%, but they're ice cold, and they're this kind of very light, refreshing beer. And, Vietnam can be very hot, and it's a fun place to just kind of grab a beer, down it. You stand around a little table, and street food is really at the center of life in Vietnam. But on some of these like long tourist days that I pack with activities, there was nothing like quenching a quick fresh beer in between, and knowing that I wasn't going to get so tired and drunk from it.
That sounds nice. I'm a big fan of I think that more beer should be sold in public. all
Sure.
around.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. It is quite, to we Americans who come from the days of prohibition, where to see beers just being flagrantly drunken on the streets. I should have been scandalized, but instead I was very grateful. So, Ryan, so we've kind of kicked off. I definitely feel the saliva glands kicking in, and it really makes me again realize. I mean, just there, we covered so many different types of foods that are specific to places, right? Like you can only get that version of those foods in those exact destinations, and to me, that's what makes street food so special. So, for the second framing question, and this I think should really be to help people plan when they're going to a destination. How do you usually figure out what is the street food you need to try when you're visiting a place? What resources do you go to?
That's a great question, Kiernan. I feel like street food's getting more attention now than it used to. So you often will find write-ups about what is the best street food to eat in the city, where do the locals eat. And those can be really guiding. But one of the things to do is after you've gone out, you've had a few drinks, is to actually go see what people are eating and where are the food trucks, or where are the stands, like where's the sort of like pedestrian action, and that's how you can really find what people are eating.
Yeah, and I like planning with a guidebook, and many guidebooks will have a somewhat generic food section. But if they mention street food, that there's a culture of street food in a place that I'm going, that's when I will search out travel blogs. Often it's foreigners who have moved to a place. So I don't want people who are just like jetting in for a day or a week. I want people who have like transplanted, emigrated to a place and are living there and are updating, what it's like to be an American living in Hanoi for a year. Because those people are out there tasting every day, and you can have a lot of luck finding recommendations for street food areas, and all the better if it is up to date. Because one thing about street food is that the geography of where you can find the best stands, the best carts, it can change so frequently because you get turf battles, and so it's important to try to find timely information online.
Yeah, I've seen the street food scene in New York City radically transform since I moved here.
Sure, because of the proliferation of food trucks.
Right. So the street food scene was pretty limited to challah, hot dogs, and your occasional sort of pretzel or kind of other vendor like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now with food trucks, there's pretty much everything. And some neighborhoods have better food trucks than others because they have more of a sort of work lunch culture,
Yeah, and New York had those the chicken and rice guys, which have now opened up like actual storefronts outside of New York.
Totally, yeah. I love chicken and rice.
Boston had a real explosion in food trucks in the last few years, and similarly, you get a lot of great local restaurants starting as food trucks, which are sort of experimenting with what people want, and you can get great deals when they're trying to build loyalty. And then they end up becoming sort of mainstays in brick and mortar stores.
Yeah, one of my favorite places to eat here in Bushwick, Brooklyn, called Buna Cafe, is a vegan Ethiopian place. It started as a food truck, and then he grew his sort of base of people who would eat there, grew a big email list, and then did an Indiegogo and opened up an actual a store. Now it's packed all the time, and it's a big hit. Born from a food truck though.
Mm. And if you're in a place where you're very unfamiliar with the cuisine, or where there's lots of different versions, so some are going to be good, some are going to be bad. You can't really find a good resource for telling them apart. Or if you don't know about the sort of sanitary attributes of particular stands and carts, I would recommend book a street food tour.
Sure.
So I had a really good luck with this when I was in Malaysia visiting Kuala Lumpur. And Kuala Lumpur, there's tons of street food all over the place. I really had a strong desire to follow the locals, as Ryan was saying. That's how you find kind of the best version. But I felt like I needed a professional to take me for like a 4-hour kind of walkabout. And this is a good way to have like a walking tour of the city along the way, because if somebody's gone out of their way to start a street food tour, they're going to point to you sites and tell you about the history of the place as well, because they're celebrating their cuisine, and those stories are often baked right in. So book a street food tour. I think that's a great way to experience and search out the best street food.
Yeah, I think that street food tours can be great, and some cities are really built for them, right? Like New York has a great street food tour situation. Mexico City, places where you've got a diversity of street food, because there's a lot of, I think, make the best case for that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'll plug one company that I would suggest you look at to see if they are operating tours while you're there, and they do have some of these very good street food tours. It's called Tours by Locals, and it's toursbylocal.com. And this is where guides can list themselves. You can actually book straight through the site. You can find out about what you'll be able to experience and try. Of course, I guess it also bears saying, if you have allergies, restrictions, or you're not an adventurous eater, maybe this episode ain't for you. Because street food, you do have to be willing to be a bit adventurous. Don't book one of these tours and then be one of those tourists that says, well, I can't have soy, and I don't enjoy any sort of cheeses, and the only meat that I eat is goat.
Well, that might be, for some countries, goat is probably a big part of the street food scene.
Predominant. No, that's a fair point. Fair point.
Now, have you been to Thailand?
No.
So do you know about this fruit that they sell on the street in Thailand called durian?
I know that it smells horrible, and it smells like sewage or something, right?
Yeah, it smells really horrible, and I remember so vividly my hotel room in Bangkok had all these had signs in the room by the little kitchen area that said do not cut durian in this room, against the rules.
Holy crap, that's really gross.
Yeah, so I tasted a little bit when I didn't have like a lot. It didn't taste as bad as it smells.
No, everybody says the taste is okay, but I mean, hard to get past the smell.
It is. I think it's probably better if it's cooked in like a custard or something. So, Kiernan, when do you usually get street food when you are traveling?
Oh, Ryan, you're really jumping the gun onto the third framing question here. You got to call out the framing questions. You got to lead the listeners on the podcast journey, Ryan.
I thought we were keeping. I guess we're very upfront about.
Keeping it loose was all for show, Ryan. We know we're working off a strict script here.
So why and when is street food preferable to fancy restaurant food? Is the official prompt.
Hey, look, you were trying to make it your own, but I don't like that. So I will say, okay, so there's a few times that I think street food. First off, I think street food can be preferable for fancy restaurants. One, it can be when you're booking a vacation or a trip last minute, right? Because you may not have time to get those reservations that are sort of like the most desirable ones in town. But that actually is an opportunity for you to hit the streets, do some research, some extra research, and take a food tour, but search out where the best street food is. It's also a great way to save money. I mean, speaking of the frugality, this is something that Rick Stevens and I could just talk about forever. I mean, you can eat your absolute fill for 10% of what it would be to go to a sit down restaurant.
Yeah, how cheap like tacos are in Mexico City. You get 3 for 50 pesos, which is like $2.
Right.
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I typically eat. So I'll eat like lunch, often street food, and then I'll do like late night, like post hangout, post bar situation, street food. I usually save dinner for like actually trying new places. But I think eating street food for lunch, because a lot of cities have like a lot of street food, extra street food at lunch because so many office workers.
Right.
And then at nighttime, there's a whole different kind of street food scene where people are drinking and they want to have something fun. So I feel like those are the two times that you've got like the most vendors offering sort of the widest variety of stuff.
Yeah, it's also great if you have a packed itinerary for that day. If you're trying to spend most of your day in museums or see churches or different tourism spots, one way that you could gain an extra hour is not go for sit down and just plan your day around a great street food place in the neighborhood that you're going to be in. That way, you eat, you're in and out in 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
And you typically eat at church, though, right? You go early enough.
The body of Christ, of course.
Yeah, and the priest will invite you over after. Yeah, like a Fleabag scenario.
Right. I also think, right, that there are places where the street food gives you much more of a taste of how locals eat than the fancy restaurants, right? Because here I'm thinking especially again of Vietnam, where really most locals are eating at street food stands that are basically tents. They're under tarps. And they have one specialty. It might be one sort of broth. It might be one sort of noodle. It might be one sort of like fish dish with dill. But they specialize in that. They have these low to the ground stools. You sit like right on the street. God forbid there be a puddle right next to you because you'll be splashed with it next. But you really feel like you are engaging with locals. And it's a place you can actually meet locals. Right. And that was one thing that I absolutely loved, particularly about, I'm thinking of Hanoi and Hue. Were really great for this. I actually have a funny story, which was in Hoi An. There was a banh mi place that I had read about, and it was actually from one of these blogs of somebody who was a transplant there and loved these banh mi. And I said to Catherine, we got to search these out. And we went to where it was supposed to be, and the banh mi place was not there anymore. I had like the exact corner. And of course, I, being single-minded, said, well, we're going to have to go street by street in this grid where there are street food vendors. And I pulled up on Google Images, like all the images I could of this exact banh mi stand. I said, okay, so we can see the cart has kind of a silver edge, and they have a window, and they feature the cilantro kind of in the bottom right. And I called that, it was like very Sherlockian.
Right,
I was really, really looking for all the details. And then we probably wandered the streets, had a great time kind of seeing this area. And sure enough, we found it, had a fantastic banh mi, well worth it. And, use the power of Google Images to know what kind of food you're looking for, what you want to order when you get to a place, but also what the stand looks like, because those stands can look very similar. And when a stand is very popular or famous, usually it gets ripped off by people who have food that is less good. So you have to be cautious. You should look for pictures of what you're looking for.
It was like after the Soup Nazi episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah,
there were all those Soup Nazi places just popped up all around.
Yeah, there's soup swastikas all over the city.
Dated ourselves with that reference.
There's no, you can't. What these millennials are watching Friends on Netflix.
Yeah,
now,
Friends is that's true.
Now one place that I would contrast with that Vietnam example was Morocco, where there were lots of street food places in the bazaars, in the Medinas that you can remember me talking about. We got a great episode that talks all about Morocco.
So I was wondering if we're counting markets as street food.
That's a great point. They are more marketplaces, but there are street food carts too. However, it really there was a particular feel that if you weren't Moroccan, this stand wasn't really for you. It did not. It didn't seem like that was your place. And there was in Marrakesh, there's a big central square that at night becomes the area where all the vendors come out. And that is clearly where tourists are welcome. And I have to say, it's a regret that I have that we didn't just bite the bullet and go to some of the local places and kind of rough our way through with the language and pointing to the food that looked good. We did go to the kind of more popular tourist area. And that actually brings me to another thing that I think street food can be better than fancy restaurant food, which is you can get smaller portions of tons and tons of local food. So there was a broth with snails in it. And like, I wouldn't want like a giant bowl of snail broth. Well, I'm just saying, I personally would not want a giant bowl of snail broth. It seems like
I'm so hungry right now. That sounds pretty delicious. I shouldn't have recorded this episode before dinner. That was a big mistake.
You're gonna quickly go on Seamless and look for the best snail broth.
The best snail broth they got in Bushwick. Yeah.
And I was able to try just a small teacup of the snail broth, and then move on to some other street food. So Vietnam, you feel like you can go in and be one of the locals. Morocco, I remember I struggled with it. Don't be like me. Bite the bullet. Be brave. Follow the locals. and skip the fancy restaurants, or at least carve out certain meals for street food.
Absolutely. No, I think that as much as I love fancy restaurants, I love street food sometimes even more. And, depending on how fancy the restaurant is, you might need to hit up some street food afterwards.
That's 100% true, right? You go for one of these tasting menus where it's like tiny cubes of stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't begrudge you grabbing a taco on the way back. Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, you might have to.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think also, I remember just talking about being able to try a variety of smaller foods. Another thing in Mexico City, I remember, was there are so many variations on tacos that even just different types of carnitas can vastly different.
And every stand has their own specialty, right? So some guy will be making the same recipe that his grandmother made, and so that it's best in Mexico. It's best just to sort of go to the taco stands and just get like whatever their main taco is. Like they'll have a taco that they do, like get that taco and then get another taco at a different stand. If you can take your time, in the tacos, street tacos are small.
Yeah.
So you can easily have 3 or 4 of them and still be well within your diet.
So you're basically creating your own street food tasting menu.
Exactly.
Now that is a good tip. Challenge yourself to create your own street food tasting menu.
I would love to have a taco right now.
Now, Ryan, the final question I have, and this is a real concern with street food, and I don't want to just be silly about it. I alluded to it earlier, which is cleanliness and the risk of getting sick from food, because especially American stomachs are you're not always going to have the microbiome to deal with street food all over the world.
You don't have like a sensitive traveler stomach, though, even though you look like you would.
I do look like I would. No, I don't. I mean, I think, listen, to a certain extent, I do think we probably should have an episode sometime where we discuss the ups and downs of traveler stomach.
Right.
Listen, when you're playing with jet
Montezuma's
lag,
revenge, they call it in Mexico.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, when you're traveling around, you're not always going to be able to keep your regular bowel movement schedule.
Oh my God.
Well, that's what we're talking about here, folks. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's a real issue we have to consider. And so I'm wondering, Ryan,
fiber is so important.
Do you have any precautionary measures you take to be sure that you're getting good and safe and clean street food?
No, I mean, I actually remember once I was in a city, and I'm not gonna name the city or anything. And there was something that I wanted to eat, and I looked at it, and I knew that I probably shouldn't. Like the color of it.
Come on, name it.
And so I went for it anyway. I ate this thing, and let me tell you, the next couple of days they were rough, and I knew exactly what I was getting myself into, but it was delicious. Okay.
Can you remind? I remember when this happened, but I don't remember where. What was it?
It was like a pork skin. It was like a pork skin taco. And boy, was it delicious! But immediately, I was like, "This is not gonna. This is not gonna be."
There were maggots actively crawling on it.
I canceled my dinner plans. I'm like, I'm not going out tonight.
And then you're like, "I shouldn't eat this last one," but it's so good.
Lost a few pounds that trip though, so that's good.
So what precautions do you take?
I mean, I think that you just, if you're following the precautions that we've already talked about, if you're eating where other people are eating, if you're looking in guidebooks, you're probably going to be fine. If there's a little stand that looks like it came out of like some sort of it just sort of appeared out of nowhere and nobody's there and it's an empty road, that's probably not the place to have your sort of street taco.
Yeah,
but,
so you're basically saying use some common sense. And that was a case where you saw something that looked delicious. You knew that, but your common sense said, Ryan, don't do this.
Yeah, I do bad things. I do things that are bad all the time, though. So that was not, that's not an unusual decision for me to make.
No, it's true. It's like canceling last minute plans when somebody has gone to the trouble of opening their home to you. So you're right.
Save that natural wine.
Write down, look, I'm pouring down the drain right now. I also think you can preemptively, if you're going to a country where you know that the food might disagree with you or where maybe produce isn't washed as thoroughly, you can get antibiotics just to have in your dob kit just in case you get very sick. So I always recommend packing, you got to pack a little Pepto-Bismol just in case, because, chances are when you go to Bhutan, you are not aware of what bacteria might be on Bhutanese yak cheese. and you don't know how your microbiome is going to deal with it. So just as always, as the Boy Scouts say, Ryan, be prepared.
Be prepared. That is good advice for pretty much everything, but street food in particular.
Well, you can also go and get a preemptive prescription from your doctor for food poison, drugs to take care of your food poisoning, so that if you ever actually did have, some serious food poisoning, it could prevent you from needing to go to a doctor there because you brought your prescription with you.
My most serious food poisoning, I've only had food poisoning, I think, 3 times in my life. 2 in the same city and 1 in New York. And the time in New York was the worst. And it was sushi, East Village Dollar Sushi.
Oh, dear.
So, FYI, Dollar Sushi. There's a reason it's $1,
Yeah, you do make bad decisions, Ryan. The one that I will say is the drug that I think is generally given is called Cipro. And it's CIPRO, and I often have one just in case with me, but it does completely clear out all the bacteria in your gut. So all the great, cultured yogurt you've been eating, all work down the drain, literally down the drain. So use it only in extreme circumstances.
It might also cure chlamydia. So it can be like a 2 birds, 1 stone situation, depending on how fun your vacation's been.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Well, on that...
what other street food you picked up?
Gross. All right, Ryan. Well, on that really unappetizing note. Listen, you and I are both passionate about street food. Hopefully, people can benefit from the examples that we gave. We'd love to hear your street food stories. And in fact, I think we should aim to try to talk more about street food when we do our city guides, when we do our country guides. Oftentimes, we're in such a rush to cover all the kind of major spots and cities that we don't get a chance to talk in depth about the food. So if you have food recommendations, you want to tell your street food story, shoot us an email, outofofficepod@gmail.com. But Ryan, after all that bathroom talk, I'm thinking maybe it's time to leave dinner, finish with the street food. I think it's time for the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
Now, Ryan, this is the last stop. It's the final segment of the show. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the People segment. It's where you and I each take just a minute, just a snap of the finger, just a short amount of time to share one thing that we experienced that week. It might be something we bought, something we read, something that we dreamed. It could be a place that we've traveled. It could be a place we're thinking of travel or planning for. It could be something we've cooked. It could be a loved one who reminded us of something. It could be anything that fed the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I need to ask you, do you have a last stop this week?
I do, Kiernan. I do have a last stop this week. A few episodes ago, we talked about how in the Bronx, the steps that the Joker in the film that I did not like, Joker, has become a tourist attraction. I was in D.C. For work last week and was in Georgetown taking some meetings and recognized as we were driving by the Exorcist steps. So I made a point to go check it out after my meeting. And these were the original film steps. So for those of you who don't know, in the film The Exorcist, there's a scene where one of the priests who was performing The Exorcist falls down, spoiler alert, falls down an incredibly long, thin set of stairs. And these are real stairs that you can go visit on the corner of Prospect Street and 36th Street Northwest in Georgetown. And there are lots of people taking pictures. Weirdly, it's still a very popular tourist attraction. And Georgetown's beautiful to walk around. So I just thought it was sort of cool to see these original Exorcist steps that look pretty much like they looked in the film. And the easiest way to find them is they're next door to a building called the Car Barn, which is a Georgetown building called, weirdly, I think that's something that Mitt Romney has, a car barn.
Yeah.
Good old Mitt Romney. Love that man.
He's part of the resistance now.
We respect him. Yeah. So these steps are from 1895. So classic old steps there.
And can you walk on them?
Yeah, you can go up and down them. I took a picture, and it's you can actually tag your photo the Exorcist steps.
Is there a sign that says that?
There isn't a sign. No, there should be, because everybody seems to know that they're.
And did you just happen upon these, or did you seek them out?
I saw them when we were driving by.
And you recognized
And I said,
them?
"Oh my gosh, are those?" Well, I always knew they were in Georgetown. I just never bothered to seek them out. And then when I happened to be just down the street for a meeting, so I figured I'd pop over and check
what a
them out.
great last stop. That really did feed your spirit of wanderlust.
I know.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. So the Exorcist steps in Georgetown. So Kiernan, please tell me you have a last stop this week.
You know me, Ryan. I always have a last stop. Yes, I have a last stop this week, and actually, it's very similar to yours. It's a great something that I just happened to come upon as I was walking through a building, and I realized, gosh, this is a notable place that folks should make trips to actually just check out. Which was, I was at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is one of my clients.
Your alma mater.
I decided to just not an alma mater. And as it happens, MIT has a commissioned art piece that is well worth seeking out, and it's sort of buried deep within the campus. But these buildings are generally open, and you can take tours of MIT, and you can just kind of wander the hallways. Ryan, do you know the artist LeWitt?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so he's sort of known for kind of bright, colorful paintings that can be. They often use like interesting geometry, and it's for those who are not familiar with him, it's Sol LeWitt, SOLLEWITT. And as it happens, MIT commissioned Sol LeWitt as one of his last public works to create the floor of this atrium of a building. So it's surrounded by the classroom buildings on all sides, but it's kind of this long U shape, and it is 5,500 square feet, and it is 15 18-foot squares of super brightly colored geometric patterns. So it almost looks like a game board. That's what it looks like to me, but it's these bright reds and yellows and blues. And, when you're in kind of a sterile classroom building, if you could look out the window at these bold colors, or on your way to class and you could look out, you definitely would feel inspired and just think more creatively. That's what I think. And so you can see it from a bunch of different windows around the buildings, or you can actually go to the door where you could walk right out into it. And the best way to find it is, if you're walking around MIT's campus, ask where the Infinite Corridor is. The Infinite Corridor is one really long hallway. A lot of major classrooms are there. That itself is a tourist destination for people who have visited MIT. But you will see a sign for the Sol LeWitt. It's called Bars of Color Within Squares, MIT. So the name is really right on the dot. And you can go see one of Sol LeWitt's last public work. So very cool, very fun to just happen around. Ryan, there are destinations all around us.
Well, if I ever get an invite to Boston, I hope I get to check that out, because I've been to MIT several times and haven't had a chance to see that.
You're a real jerk. Now, Ryan, next week, we will be talking about, we're going to go back to an episode that we had before. It was called Obscure Museums of London. You remember that episode?
Part one, yeah.
Part one, exactly. So surprisingly, well, not surprising to me, but I think surprising to you, because you gave me a really hard time when I wanted to do that show. Obscure Museums of London has proven very popular among our downloads. So, I used to live in London. I'm going to do Obscure Museums of London Part 2. London.
Even more obscure.
even more obscure.
The one stamp in somebody's basement,
London is a great museum town. We have hardly scratched the surface of all the museums that there are available to. And I'm not talking British Museum. I'm not talking Natural History Museum.
Great museum,
we are talking
great museum.
Obscure museums. Sure. Great museums, but we're going to go, all right, Obscure Museums of London Part 2, more obscure, more museumy.
Well, until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
The seat taken. Ryan, if you were to start a street food stand there in New York, what would you be your specialty?
Maryland fried chicken. I've already thought about it.
What's Maryland fried chicken?
Maryland fried chicken is just it's just a certain way that I can't describe what Maryland fried chicken is. It's just really good fried chicken. It's like down home Southern fried chicken they don't have here in New York.
Boy, you didn't sell that very well. I'm not gonna
No.
lie. I think I might be walking to the next stand.